Hey, what's up everybody? This is Super501 and today I want to go over an anomaly power focused build for the Devastator that will allow you to solo challenge tier 15 expeditions with gold times very easily. Now before we get into the video, only 6% of people that watch my videos are subscribed to my channel. So make sure to subscribe if you want to keep up with all of my videos. Now this build is very similar to my last anomaly powered Devastator build and mainly only has weapon differences, but with changing up the weapons, this build actually plays a lot different than it did with the weapons that I was using in my last iteration of this build. So first off, we have our skills, and first up we have Earthquake, which is one of our main damage spamming abilities. With our mods, this will have 3 charges. It will apply bleed on enemies and do a ton of damage to all the enemies in a big row in front of you. Then we have Golem. Now this is mainly used as a utility skill. Itself gives a massive damage reduction, which helps a bit with survivability, but one of the main reasons we're using it is because it gives us a massive anomaly power boost with one of our class passives. Then finally, we have Impale, which is our big burst damage ability. With our mods, this will have 4 charges. It will hit 3 enemies and do a massive amount of damage to everything. For elite enemies or bosses, this is our main damaging ability. And next up, we have our class tree, and I'm going to try to go through these quickly because most of these are just stat increases. So we have anomaly power increase, reduces cooldown of our seismic skills, which is earthquake and impale, so our main damage abilities. Increase anomaly power, reduces protection cooldown, so for our golem. And this is the main reason we're using golem. When we use a protection skill, we gain 45% anomaly power for 10 seconds. Then we have resistance piercing, anomaly power increase. Then we have extend the duration of what's considered close range, and this is mainly for increasing our armor by 7% for every enemy in close range. It gives us a massive survivability increase and synergizes with some of our other passives. Then we have reduces seismic skills cooldown again, increases anomaly power, increases damage dealt to enemies at low health, increases anomaly power, bleeds deal 30% more damage. We're healed for 25% of our bleed damage, which is our main survivability and healing for the build. Increases skill life leech, increase our armor by 40% of our anomaly power, which is another massive survivability addition. Increases our armor and resistance by 20% for 10 seconds when your skills end, which will be at pretty much 100% of the time, and this adds a massive amount of survivability as well. Bleeds deal an additional 30% damage, and then our seismic skills base damage increased by 50%, so that's our earthquake and impale, which are our main damaging abilities. So then we have our weapons, which are the main changes for this variation of this build. And the main thing we're going to be using and focusing on with our weapons is Moaning Winds, which is actually going to be on our main weapon, our secondary main weapon, and then our secondary weapon as well. And Moaning Winds does a massive AoE damage ability when you reload, and it hits everything in 8 meters, which is a massive radius, has an 8-second cooldown, and does almost 400,000 damage at its base. With some buffs up, this will be hitting over 1 million damage. And the reason we're going to have this on all 3 of our weapons is because every weapon has its own cooldown for its mods. So what we can do is we can reload this weapon, proc Moaning Winds, switch to our death shield, reload it, proc Moaning Winds, switch to our secondary, reload that, proc Moaning Winds. And then we can just cycle through our 3 weapons, pretty much tripling the damage we can get from Moaning Winds. And it's a massive AoE damaging proc and does a ridiculous amount of damage. So our first weapon, we have the Anomaly, which comes with Moaning Winds. I rolled Fortress on this for just a general damage increase. Fortress is absolutely ridiculous, especially for anomaly power builds. Then I chose Death Shield because this comes with Fortress, so we can have that on it. And then I rolled Moaning Winds on this. So both of these are going to be having higher damage Moaning Winds, and we want to always have one of these in our hands when we're not cycling through using all of our Moaning Winds. Then for our pistol, I'm using Torment and Agony, which I rolled Moaning Winds on. And I'm using this pistol because it also has Clip Combustion, which is just pretty much the tier 1 version of Moaning Winds. Lower cooldown, but a lot less damage and a smaller radius. I'm not sure if there's going to be a better pistol for this because I don't think you can get Fortress and Moaning Winds on any pistol, but the main thing you're going to want is Moaning Winds on all of your weapons. And you'll see in the footage how you're going to go about using these weapons. You're just going to cycle through them to keep Moaning Winds procced, and I'll go over a tip once I get into the playstyle of the build as well. So next up, we have our armor pieces. Now the stat priority for this build is going to be anomaly power, cooldown reduction, status power, and skill life leech. And we can actually get really good rolls with this build with using the tier set. And the tier set bonus we're going to be using is is the Seismic Commander's set, which increases damage towards enemies that are bleeding by 50%, and all of our abilities, or our main damaging abilities, apply bleed to everything, so we're just going to be getting massive damage increases most of the time. So first off, we have our helmet, a Seismic Commander's piece, Anomaly power, status power, skill life leech, decent rolled stats, and we need this for our tier set. The mods on this: Ultimate Impaler. Your Impaler can be used 2 more times before triggering the cooldown. This puts it up to 3. And then our Earthquake applies bleed to all enemies hit, which is one of our most important mods for this build. This is the main way we're going to be applying bleed to enemies. Then we have our chest piece, another Seismic Commander's piece, Anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction, god rolled stats for our build. We have Palisade. Impale strikes 2 additional targets, so now it's hitting 3 targets every time you impale, which is massive. And then we rolled extra quake, so Earthquake can be used 1 additional time before triggering the cooldown, so it's up to 2 charges with this. Then we have our legs, our third Seismic Commander's piece for a tier set bonus. Anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction, god rolled stats for this build again. And this comes with Tainted Blood, so now we deal an additional 25% damage to enemies that are bleeding. That's massive, that synergizes well with everything about our build. And then Rivers of Blood. Impale now deals 50% more damage to enemies afflicted by bleed, so just massively increases our Impale damage and synergizes with everything else our build is doing. And then we have our gloves. I actually had better rolled gloves the last time I went over an Anomaly power Devastator build. I accidentally dismantled them, a side effect of not having a save option in the game, but I was able to get decently rolled gloves nonetheless. Anomaly power, skill life leech, healing received. Not the best attributes, but still decent and definitely usable. Our main mod on this is increases Earthquake's damage by 84,000, just a really big damage increase to our Earthquake. Then I rolled Impaler on it, so now our Impale can be used an additional time before triggering their cooldown, putting our Impale up to 4 charges before triggering the cooldown. And then finally we have our boots, Anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction, god rolled stats, and I have Sharpened Spike on this, so our Impale does 130,000 more damage, which is massive, turns our Impale to a massive burst damage ability. Then I rolled Second Quake, which allows us to use our Earthquake 1 additional time, and this is the tier 3 version. There's a tier 1 version, which is on our chest piece, and then there's a tier 3 version. They both stack, so now we have 3 charges of Earthquake. So that is the entirety of this build, and for the playstyle and how you're going to go about using your abilities, using your weapons, you essentially want to spam out your abilities as quickly as possible. You want to Earthquake everything to try to apply bleed to everything. Your Impale is going to be more focused on finishing off enemies and doing massive amounts of damage to elite enemies. And then when you're going about using your weapons, you're going to want to weave reloading all of your weapons in with your abilities. If you can, make sure you have bleed applied to as much enemies as you can. You can also apply bleed to enemies with your melee, so you can AoE apply bleeds to additional enemies with your melee if you need to. And you're essentially just going to go to your main weapon, reload it, switch to your other primary, reload it, switch to your secondary, reload it, and then go back to your main weapon. Use your abilities in between that while you're waiting for the cooldown to come up on all of your weapons. And a tip for using all your weapons, you're not really going to be ever using these for shooting or using their base weapon damage. So what you can do is you can actually shoot 1 or a few bullets of all of your weapons, and then right when you reload a weapon or right when you press reload, it will proc Moaning Winds. So then what you can do is right when you reload, it procs Moaning Winds, you then switch weapons before the reload is completed. So it won't actually reload that magazine. So you can keep every weapon with 1 round used out of the weapon, so you never have to actually go through with the entire reload animation. You can just reload, it'll proc Moaning Winds right away, switch weapons so the reload isn't finished. And that will allow you to never have to worry about shooting to be able to reload your weapon. So subscribe if you want to see more Outriders or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about this build, and thanks for watching.
You want me to raise your soldiers' morale? There's no one left. Now you know the clusterfuck I'm dealing with. Artillery support incoming!
Coastal is clear. That's one of our pods. Naturally, it's landed on the insurgents. You again. What a waste of your last words. Remember that freak I fought last time? The one who nearly buried me alive?
Am I gonna have to dig you out of the rubble again?
Not this time. He's sung his last. And the pod's ours.